It's Thursday, July 24th, 2008, and it's 4:20 somewhere in the world. I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C., this is your NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about our show at our website, stash.norml.org, and continue the education and conversation on our blog as well. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. The podcasting and blogging technology for the NORML Daily Audio Stash is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. For your professional web design needs, visit redaphid.com. Hey Stashers, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here. It is July 24th, 2008, and that means it is my mom's 61st birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. Coming up on the Stash today, it's time for 420 Comedy with our cannabis comedy correspondent, Terry Joyce of Hollyweed Live and formerly of Last Comic Standing. Terry's bringing to us today a great comedy legend, a man who used to write for the Richard Pryor Show and was on the show Make Me Laugh. You've seen him in a whole bunch of movies. Vic Dunlop will be joining us on the Stash today. Also, we'll be speaking to Bill Rittenberg, a criminal defense attorney in New Orleans, Louisiana, about the recent high-profile increase in felony prosecutions of small-time marijuana offenders, so stay tuned for that. Also, we've got your musical break with some Toker tunes that I'm sure you're going to enjoy, and our regular hemp headlines and a case of reefer madness. So stay tuned, grab yourself your favorite pipe, load it up with your favorite smoke, and enjoy your NORML Daily Audio Stash. Now it's time to take a look at the latest stories about marijuana from news organizations across America and around the world in our NORML Daily Audio Stash, Hemp Headlines. Bong Hits for Jesus case going back to court. From the Juneau Empire. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals will hear arguments in the case in September, local attorney Doug Mertz said Wednesday. Mertz represents Joseph Frederick, the former Juneau Douglas High School student who displayed the Bong Hits for Jesus banner that sparked a free speech debate that has been going on for 6 years and has been heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. Mertz said the Supreme Court ruling had not addressed all the issues involved in the case, particularly whether Alaska's free speech provisions protected Frederick's actions and whether the banner constituted a legitimate political or social protest rather than a pro-drug declaration. Frederick pressed his case in district court but was turned down. The appeal is in reaction to that decision. Mertz said in a statement, quote, "Frederick's banner had nothing to do with drugs. The principal seizure of it was unreasonable, and the banner was well within the protections of the Alaska Constitution." End quote. Mertz said he was notified directly that the same panel of 3 judges that had previously sided with his client agreed to hear the case. The case started in 2002 when then Juneau Douglas High School principal Deborah Morse took down Frederick's banner at a school-sponsored off-campus event and suspended him from school. Frederick sued, saying his right to free speech had been violated. The case eventually went to the Supreme Court, which sided with Principal Morse and the school district in 2007. The Supreme Court had ruled in favor of the principal on the narrow interpretation that Bong Hits for Jesus was a passage intended to celebrate drug use, and therefore the school, in its mission to prevent student drug use, is justified in tearing down the banner. The influential Supreme Court blog SCOTUS blog noted, The Chief Justice's opinion, too, indicates that the case would have come out differently if the banner had conveyed any sort of political or religious message, such as that involved in political debate over the criminalization of drug use or possession, rather than, in the court's view, mere student speech celebrating illegal drug use. Debate, political and religious messages, protected. Celebration of illegal activity, drug use anyway, no go. That's the upshot. If only the sign had said, "It is politically wrong to make bong hits," which we would never endorse, "illegal for Jesus, who I believe is the Son of God and commanded by him to partake of the cannabis sacrament," then he would have passed under the Roberts Court. It might have been hard to read and even harder to write with duct tape, but at least it wouldn't have been illegal student speech celebrating drug use. Deputy Drug Czar visits America's Grow House capital from the Arcata Eye, Arcata, California. On Tuesday, July 15th, Arcata hosted Scott Burns, Deputy Director of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, who is the Bush administration's second-in-command for drug regulation. After participating in marijuana raids in Eureka and Point South and meeting with county officials, Burns traveled to what has apparently come to be known as America's Grow House capital, the city of Arcata. In an interview, Burns adamantly dismissed any notion of medical usefulness of marijuana, saying that dosages are unregulated, smoking is an irresponsible delivery system, and that suitable substitutes for medical cannabis exist in the form of FDA-approved medications. Legalization, Burns said, would immediately lead to even more widespread use. He said today's marijuana fundamentally alters human brain structure and leads to addiction and ruined lives. Burns said grow houses, including home gardens maintained by purported Prop 215 patients, are used to supply dispensaries, which the federal government views as criminal enterprises. In fact, 2 of the 4 existing Arcata dispensaries have admitted buying from residential Prop 215 grows. He said owners of dispensaries risk losing their property via asset forfeiture, which he said, quote, "I predict will happen soon," end quote. City Manager Michael Hackett said that the city hadn't called the meeting with Burns, but that city officials and others were happy to share their views. Hackett said, quote, "Everyone that spoke made the statement loud and clear that this community supports compassionate use, but that in some cases it has gotten out of hand," end quote. The Burns interview airs on KHSU 90.5 FM this Friday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time. It will also be streamed online at khsu.org. The transcript of Deputy Drug Czar Burns' interview will be online tomorrow and should, no doubt, earn him a spot in my Reefer Madness segment. I'm always amused at the prohibitionists who are alarmed at the grow house industry. They point to dispensaries and say, "See? Look what medical marijuana has done. It's moved criminal drug manufacturing to the suburbs." No, prohibition is what forces people to grow marijuana in suburban houses, where it is out of sight from marauding law enforcement. Most people would love to grow big outdoor marijuana gardens, but you guys keep ripping them up. This is why marijuana must be legalized for all people, healthy as well as sick. Until it is, medical users of marijuana will continue to suffer from the unintended and intended consequences of law enforcement crackdowns on the social users of marijuana.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death.
Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind.
If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face to face with the monster of marijuana, he would drop dead from fright.
Reefer Madness.
For our latest installment of Reefer Madness, we turn to Kevin A. Sabet, Ph.D., who's an advisor to the Inland Valley Drug-Free Community Coalition and has been researching and consulting on drug abuse matters for more than 14 years. He's a former Office of National Drug Control Policy senior official under both the Clinton and Bush administrations, and he penned this op-ed that appears at thedailybulletin.com.
A recent article in the Daily Bulletin regarding medical marijuana failed to mention the fallacies and problems associated with what has become a personal mission and profession for a limited few to blatantly distort the truth in an attempt to lead readers to believe that smoked marijuana is medicine. The simple failure to mention the scores of young adults and others who obtain marijuana cards simply to get high is rather astonishing. Instead, the Sun was scammed by the pro-legalization movement that constantly seeks out and pushes the sick into the view of the media for their own selfish cause. Never will they tell you about the scores of youth and adults who have California-issued marijuana cards for no other purpose than to get high. Now that would make a story worth publishing.
You know what I find interesting is that in the 12 years that prohibitionists have pushed this theory that us marijuana activists are conning the public by taking advantage of the sick and dying, not one of these sick and dying patients have ever complained. Never do I hear a medical marijuana patient say, "Damn you, NORML, MPP, DPA, ASA, quit using me to legalize marijuana. Medical marijuana's a sham. Please take away my right to use medicine because some young adults are using that right to get high."
Unfortunately, Proposition 215 has nothing to do with the sick and dying, as a simple read of its text reveals that marijuana can legally be recommended for, quote, any illness for which marijuana provides relief, end quote. A recent column in the Los Angeles Times, This Bud's for You and You and You by Joel Stein, and a 2007 expose by 60 Minutes have revealed just how easy it is to obtain marijuana, sick or not.
So what you're complaining about then is that thousands of potheads who were buying and using dope in secret and funneling cash into a criminal black market are now seeking the approval of a doctor, purchasing dope openly and legally under state law, and contributing millions to California's budget through dispensary sales taxes. Okay.
A landmark study almost 10 years ago, conducted by the Institute of Medicine, stated that, quote, smoked marijuana should generally not be recommended for medical use, end quote. Smoked marijuana, smoked anything, has never passed basic medical standards of safety and efficacy.
Did you think we weren't going to read the rest of that paragraph from the 1999 Institutes of Medicine study? You know, the parts you so easily edited, where it says, quote,
because of the health risks associated with smoking, smoked marijuana should generally not be recommended for long-term medical use. Nonetheless, for certain patients, such as the terminally ill or those with debilitating symptoms, the long-term risks are not of great concern. The goal of clinical trials of smoked marijuana would not be to develop marijuana as a licensed drug, but rather as a first step toward the possible development of non-smoked, rapid-onset cannabinoid delivery systems.
Now these days, we call such systems vaporizers, and they provide all of the medicine and none of the smoke. Patients can also eat their medicine in edibles. Furthermore, even if you do smoke your medicine, since that 1999 study, we've seen the 2006 work by Dr. Donald Tashkin from the University of California, Los Angeles Medical Center, who told the Washington Post, quote,
we hypothesized that there would be a positive association between marijuana use and lung cancer, and that the association would be more positive with heavier use. What we found instead was no association at all, and even a suggestion of some protective effect.
End quote.
Medical marijuana dispensaries mask as havens for the sick, when in reality they serve as city-condoned centers for drug use. Of course, there may be some people who genuinely use it to feel better from their illness, but smoking a drug as volatile and unstable as marijuana is like chewing on willow bark to partake in the benefits of aspirin.
Except you're not proposing to arrest and lock up people for chewing willow bark. I'm also wondering where he's buying this volatile and unstable marijuana. A nuclear power plant? How is it that an herb that has no toxic dose is volatile, and how unstable could it be when its users are the most peaceful, mellow people on the planet?
For those whose doctors think that some components of the cannabis plant may be therapeutic, marinol, derived from the plant's most active ingredient, THC, already exists. Other isolated components in marijuana, delivered in aerosol sprays or patches, are currently being studied, and the research in this area is important. Cannabis-based drugs could indeed open new pathways to fight obesity, nausea, multiple sclerosis, and other illnesses, But, just as someone should not inject heroin to gain the therapeutic effects of morphine, these drugs need to be used in the proper context and setting.
Strange, isn't it, that the 100% pure THC pill is prescribable, but the 4 to 15% pure THC plant is volatile and unstable. What he doesn't realize is that Marinol lacks the CBDs that are found in the plant. CBDs mitigate some of the psychoactive effects of THC. So he's recommending a drug that is 7 times more potent and more psychoactive than medical marijuana, but at least you don't smoke it.
Legalizing smoked marijuana under the guise of medicine is irresponsible and contradictory to basic scientific standards for therapeutic drugs. Even if smoking marijuana might make someone to feel better, that is not enough to call it medicine. If that was the case, then tobacco cigarettes or vodka shots could be called medicine because they are often attributed with making one feel better.
Except that the guy who feels better every day with tobacco cigarettes or vodka shots is going to develop lung cancer or cirrhosis, while the pot smoker will just keep feeling better. The author reveals a very common bias in the prohibitionist argument, the moral indignation against smoking marijuana. He can have someone use the same exact drug in a pill, in a spray, or a patch, and he even admits to its medical efficacy. It's that joint smoking, or more accurately, his stereotyped image of the dirty, stinky hippies that smoke joints, that he's got a problem with.
Furthermore, it is contrary to common sense and established law to have the electorate, influenced by big spending from pro-marijuana interest groups, decide what medicine is.
Right. We'll return to this argument right after these advertisements for erectile dysfunction pills, restless leg syndrome pills, and a few different pharmaceutical drugs that killed tens of thousands of patients. Like Vioxx. Drugs that were all approved through standard medical regulatory channels that had been greased by the big spending from pro-pharmaceutical interest groups. In other words, the government gave you safe Vioxx that killed over 27,000, and the people gave you volatile and unstable medical marijuana that killed 0. Who do you trust? Look, Dr. Sabet, let me let you in on a little secret. The public isn't being scammed by medical marijuana. People know how easy it is to get a medical card, and by and large, they don't care. Proposition 215 clearly allowed marijuana use for any condition the doctor felt it would help. Californians weren't stupid. They just felt like marijuana is no big deal and the government shouldn't interfere between doctors and patients.
Now it's time to play Pass the Stash, where you can win cool prizes from NORML.
Hey Stashers, time for a brand new Pass the Stash contest. This one's going to run all the way through the end of July, so you've got till July 31st to get your entries in to stash@norml.org. Here's the contest, and it's inspired by a conversation with a friend of mine, Scott, from Herb Age Designs. Check them out at herbagedesigns.com. And we were talking about what's the smallest amount you've ever heard of anyone being busted for marijuana, the smallest amount in possession. And Scott had quite a surprising answer. I'm not going to give it away yet because I want you guys to enter. So the person who can prove to me that they were busted with the smallest amount of marijuana in grams or less than a gram, just send me an email at stash@norml.org and you could win a copy of the DVD, aka Tommy Chong, the Josh Gilbert documentary that chronicles Tommy Chong's 9 months in prison that he served for selling bongs on the internet. If yours is the entry with the smallest amount and you can prove it by July 31st, you'll win the DVD. We'll just mail it right out to you. You can remain anonymous and you must be 18 or over to play. And thanks for playing Pass the Stash.
Hello, I'm Paul Stanford from the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, or THCF. Medical marijuana is legal in 12 states today, and THCF has medical clinics in 6 of those states. Our physicians help qualified patients obtain an authorization for medical marijuana in their state. Patients are eligible for medical marijuana with a history of either severe chronic pain and or nausea, cancer, AIDS or HIV, hepatitis, glaucoma, seizure disorders like epilepsy, chronic muscle spasms as in multiple sclerosis or asthma, neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, and gastrointestinal disorders like IBS or Crohn's disease. If you or someone you know has one of these conditions, our doctors will help them obtain a permit for medical marijuana. THCF Medical Clinics has offices in Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, Nevada, Hawaii, and California. Call 1-800-723-0188 or go to the web at www.hemp.org or 1-800-723-0188.
Weed.
That's Hooey Valley, hooey-ha.
Weed.
Where any office boy or young mechanic.
Now it's time to take a look at 420 Comedy with the star of Hollyweed Live. You know her from the season 1 of Last Comic Standing on NBC. It's Terry Joyce. Terry, welcome back to the Stash.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's so good to have you back here. And how's everything going down there as far as driving around in Hollyweed? The gas prices have gotten pretty crazy. I know that.
Oh, they have gotten really crazy. Gas prices are really high. And Southern California or the Hollywood, West Hollywood area, in Los Angeles, we're so spread out.
Oh, yeah.
That you have to be in your car, really, to get anywhere. And our public transportation, it's okay, but if from going from Hollywood to Pasadena, you spend 4 hours going up and back by going on a bus to a train to another train, and it just gets really difficult. So it's pretty bad. And they're also here. There's no place to park.
Right.
I mean, everywhere you have to pay for parking. Either, there's lots where you pay $10, $20 to park your car where you go out and party on Sunset Boulevard, or however. I mean, I had a friend who was over yesterday, and across the street between 4 and 7, if you don't move your car, it gets towed. And he was towed yesterday.
Oh, no.
He was pissed. And when you really break it down, you realize that you get a $65 ticket just for, having it towed. And then it goes to the tow company. It's $178.
Ooh.
And then all these people get money off of it.
Yeah.
And my friend was just screaming and yelling at everyone and going, but I'm broke and, I'm unemployed. Can't you just give me a break? And he said, what about my AAA card? Can't I use my AAA card for it? You towed it. And then he's, only 47, but he begged for a senior citizen discount. And then I look at him and he looks at me and he goes, fuck the universe.
Wow.
F you as a signature. I mean, he was not happy.
I guess not.
And then I was at the tow company, and they have an auction for cars there every Tuesday at 1:00 because some people just can't even get their car out of hock.
Right.
Then I thought, well, maybe I should go because I've been having car problems. My car is not working, and I had a friend. Well, he's not really a friend. He's a friend of a friend.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, I'm in Mensa. I'm a genius. I can fix your car. And I'm like, great. I'm thinking, oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Because I really didn't have the money to really pay for it. It's like he's helping me out. But then he starts talking about stuff like, my doctor has prescribed Viagra, to me 3 times a day. And she says that if I must have sex 3 times a week, and if I do, it'll extend my life. And I'm like, dude, man, I just want you to fix my car.
Yeah.
I really had to deal with that. Like that was the exchange.
Oh my.
And thank God I didn't do them because my car isn't fixed.
Yeah.
I would have been really pissed if I gave it up.
Yeah, you got to have the car working at least.
I mean, the things that a woman has to do to just get things done is just really frightening.
Oh yeah, almost too much information there, Terry.
But it is a little scary right now. It's like the oil prices are high. The food prices are high. And a lot of us are just trying to somehow find a way to survive. I mean, I don't want to have to go to the grocery store and go, hey, maybe I can do you for this loaf of bread.
Yeah, that'll be going too far.
It's like, it's getting desperate, and I think we need to look to hemp.
I agree with you
We
there.
need to legalize hemp because that's a source of fuel, and that's a source of, food and energy and clothing, and we don't have to cut down trees anymore.
Yeah.
And I just really think that if Obama came up and said, I think we should legalize hemp.
Yeah.
For our energy, our source of energy and our economy problems, I think a lot of people would vote for him because marijuana. If marijuana was running for president, it is so popular it would win.
Marijuana for president. Now there's something I can get behind.
Right, marijuana for president.
Now you've got a special guest for us today joining us, Vic Dunlop. And how did you meet Vic?
This is an interesting story. I met Vic at the Friars Club.
Oh yeah.
Which is, the big, famous place where, all the stars hung out and the comedians and stuff like that. And, this is a long time ago, and we were meeting these, guys that they were producers, and I think one of them had done That Girl, I mean, way back when. And we're all around the table, and Vic was kind of sitting across from me, and I was feeling kind of nervous, because it was kind of my first time and all that kind of stuff. And one of the producers looked at me and he goes, hey, why don't you do some of your shtick? And I must have looked like I was horrified because that's the worst thing to ask someone is just, hey, say some jokes right in front of me,
Yeah, be funny right now.
Yeah, and you're like, oh God, what should I do? The pussy joke? I don't know. You know what I mean? Your head is just like editing as fast as you can, like, to be the least amount of offensive as you could possibly be. Well, maybe that's my story.
Yeah.
And Vic looks at, he just chimes in and he goes, you can't do that to her. He goes, you have to either see a show or look at a tape or however. And then he diverted the conversation off of me. Basically, he kind of saved my ass in that moment. And then at one point, the guy who was, running the whole little meeting says, hey, because Milton Berle was there. And he goes, hey, do you want to meet Milton Berle?
Uncle Milty, yeah.
So, the guys go up and they shake Milton Berle's hand, and then at some point I kind of came in, in the middle of it, and he grabbed my hand, but Milton Berle wouldn't let go of my hand.
Uh-huh.
So he was like a horny old man.
That's the legend in comedy I hear about Milton Berle.
And so when it was all over, Vic turned to me and he goes, do you think he dyes his hair? He goes, I heard he has a big schlong. And so then, we went down into, when we got our cars in the parking garage, I thanked him for helping me out, and he said no problem. And he's a comedy legend. I mean, he's from a show called Make Me Laugh, and it's not the one that we saw in the 90s on Comedy Central. It's the original one with Bruce Baum. I mean, a lot of people broke out during that time. And really, that show was really kind of the catalyst of what started the road. Because from that show, they go, oh, well, we're going to be appearing over here in this part of the country from this show, and perform. And so, these guys really kind of launched somewhat the entire comedy movement.
Well, great. Well, let's get Vic on the line here. We're going to be talking to him. He's on the road as we speak right now. So, Vic Dunlop, he was a writer for the Richard Pryor Show, and he played that one guy in countless movies and TV shows, and he's a stand-up comedy veteran. And Vic, welcome to the Daily Audio Stash.
Well, thank you, sir.
Now,
what are you stashing there?
Well, we're stashing a little growing truth about cannabis, if you get my drift.
Hey, listen, I truly do. I truly do. They just had a major bust here in L.A. recently, so not only is it no precipitation in the air, but it's also very dry.
Very dry. I know what you mean by that. Now, you've got a couple of projects going on right now. People should check out myspace.com/Vic Dunlop. That's L-O-P, Vic Dunlop. And the Comedy Underground also at vdcomedy.com. And what's that all about?
Well, the Comedy Underground is, it is I have some... It has turned into a vidcast. I started out with a small podcast, and one of my episodes would probably be of interest to everybody in your market out there. Actually, you know, I'm talking out of my head because I recently quit smoking pot. I ran out, actually.
Yeah.
Stag is a good time to quit, so I had to go get my card.
Ah, you're in California. You've got your medical card then.
I've got 5 medical cards. I'm an amputee, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. When I came home from Vietnam, I had a lot of conditions.
You sounds like you deserve 3 cards.
I told you, I have 5. So, and I'm warning everybody, do not leave your card laying around.
Yeah.
Because I will swipe it.
Like a lighter.
Exactly right, my friend. Exactly right.
Yeah, I was, my doctor says that I need medical marijuana to treat my chronic sobriety.
A wise doctor.
Yeah. So marijuana's been a part of your life for a long time then?
Since the 60s. I'm old school.
Now, what do you think about, you know, we hear this talk from the drug czar. They talk about how the marijuana today is so much more powerful than the marijuana of the 60s. Is that true or false?
Absolutely. 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 In my day, although once I got to Vietnam, things changed. Once I was at Vietnam, the marijuana back there was very potent.
And you guys brought it all back for us and shared with the world.
As I say to everybody, hey, all you young people, you can thank me because I was over there making sure that no drugs ever left that country to infiltrate your young minds.
That's right. I'm sure that was quite effective. Well, I was just wondering if you have any shows that you're going to be doing up in anytime soon, TV, movies, or even just stand up.
Actually, you know what? I just started a new career and became a life coach.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I teach comedy, and I have my first show is going to be September the 20th on Time Warner Cable, and it's called Dick Dunlop Life Coach / Life Coach.
So what do we do to coach as a life coach, to coach someone for getting through the world as a pot smoker in a world where it's illegal and you can be thrown in jail? What would the life coach tell someone to stay out of jail?
Go get your medicinal marijuana card.
Well, what if you're not in California?
Well, then you continue purchasing it the way you have been, but you just have to take those precautions. Know the people that you're medicating with. I mean, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, gosh, and part of the 90s, you didn't just open up and meditate in front of everybody. You didn't smoke your marijuana in front of everybody. You were cautious. There's ways of doing it. Know who your friends are, and just, yeah. I think where there's a will, there's a way. And I say this with love and respect. A pothead should not be able to smoke their weed. Anywhere or anytime. I remember on an airplane when I would fly doing a gig, so I go back to the back of the airplane when they allowed smoking. Remember when you could smoke in an airplane?
I don't go back that far.
Okay, well, it used to be you could smoke in an airplane. I'd go back to the bathroom in an airplane, especially on these long flights from the East Coast, and go back into the bathroom and meditate.
Wow. The real Mile High Club.
Exactly. Exactly. We've been in many circumstances. When I started, we had to be very cautious about where and when and how we did it. So, as a life coach, I would say just be cautious.
Be cautious, yeah. So,
try to do it at home.
Now, looking back, do you see, amongst the people, the stoners, a big difference between the stoners of the 60s and 70s and the stoners of today?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if it was, it's just, I think it was the cultures were different. In my day, we would get stoned, and it was for enjoyment and to go to another dimension, and better, the music was better listening. You could just enjoy it and get a different value. Nowadays, you have your stoners back then, they're all hippies and earth people. And nowadays, they're businessmen, doctors. Back in my day, we were all hippies, free love, and just out there fighting the war. I mean, all of it was great. At least we had sex, weed, and rock and roll. Nowadays, you can't grow weed in the sand in this war.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's hard to do that. But nowadays, you have corporate people, business people. It's not looked down upon as much. You know, now it's not a big deal. You know, I don't know when the government's going to open their eyes and realize that it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Keith Stropp is fond of saying that nowadays there are probably more people alive in America who have smoked weed at some time than haven't.
That is exactly correct. I mean, you know, now you say, I'm at a comedy club, and I'll do my routine, and I'll say, what am I talking about that? And I guarantee you that 85% of that crowd shares. And the 15% are alcoholics. And you were called a communist if you smoked weed. Are you a communist? I think they gotta go ahead too, because that's gonna help. And you know what? I wouldn't have it, but marijuana will also alter the gas prices.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You need to find hemp in the gas.
That's right, hemp biodiesel.
Yeah, biodiesel, absolutely, sir.
Hemp for victory.
I think we're going to see it in our lifetime. We're going to see this new law come out saying, look, guys, go for it.
I certainly hope so. That's what we're fighting here on the Daily Audio Stash.
I truly support you, and I always have. I see nothing wrong with it.
Right on, man. Thank you. So, hey, Vic, thanks for joining us here on the Daily Audio Stash. And Terry Joyce, again, thank you for being our comedy correspondent for 420 Comedy.
Oh, well, thank you. I really enjoy it. I just want to let, I am doing a show. I'm doing a benefit on August 7th in Pasadena for the Greater Pasadena AIDS Fund.
Well, that's excellent. Send me that by email, and I'll make sure that there's a link to it up on our website at stash.normal.org.
Sure.
All right. Thanks a lot. Terry Joyce in Hollyweed, California.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I smoke lots of weed, man. I plant that big old seed, man. I smoke every strain there is in town. From the super sticky green to the headache Mexican brown. I smoked every strain there is around.
I know that I like it. I know that lots of people like it. So let's see what happens if you overdo it.
Do we have any pot smokers here today? Any at all?
My name is Doug Benson, and I'm about to get super high.
The term medical marijuana, you basically, you drank the Kool-Aid. Because there is no such thing as medical marijuana.
I'm going to smoke pot every day for 30 days and try to remember to film it.
And my movie's going to be called Super High Me.
Or Business as Usual. I haven't decided yet on the title.
I'm going to be hospitalized, I think.
Some people call it dope. Some think it smells like burning rope. I tell you, it relieves my mind.
Here at the Normal Daily Audio Stash, we work hard to change our nation's marijuana laws through education and discussion. But we also take time to relax and unwind with an eclectic mix of pod-safe music from many independent artists. We look for music that speaks to the growing truth about cannabis, or music that speaks to broader themes of freedom, liberty, social justice, equality, and protest. To find out more about the artists and download the music you hear on this podcast, just log on to stash.normal.org. And if you'd like to get your music heard by the online cannabis community, just send us an email at stash@normal.org. Welcome to Thursday, Stashers. Today we get a little easy rock music with Ryan Hammer and his song, Freedom. Ryan takes acoustic rock and lends his strong vocals to produce some great modern music. Ryan is from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. He plays a mean guitar and the piano as well. Visit his MySpace page for more of his music, and you can find that link at our blog at stash.normal.org. Freedom is what we are striving for, that moment when we are all free to do as we please, as long as we hurt no one else. Franklin Roosevelt once said, "In the truest sense, freedom cannot be bestowed, it must be achieved." And thanks to all you Stashers for helping us to achieve freedom. You can learn more about Ryan by visiting our blog at stash.normal.org, where you can also find an MP3 download for this song. It's Ryan Hammer with Freedom.
ever needed now. All I ever had was you. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed now. All I ever had was you. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed now. All I ever had was you. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed now. All I ever had was you. In that freedom, I'm free to do whatever I want. Freedom, that freedom, I'm free to do whatever I want. It's that freedom, I'm free to do whatever I want.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Will. I don't work at a used record store. I don't own an iguana, although I'm sure they make great pets. I don't have dreadlocks or play the acoustic guitar. I can remember quite well, thank you, and no, I don't constantly have the munchies. When 420 comes around, I've still got 40 minutes of work left. I've never hit a girl on a bike with my car or shot my friend with a shotgun. I've never had to apologize for letting a girl I was watching drown in a pool while I was getting high because, duh, I wouldn't be getting high if I was around children. I'm a regular guy who works regular jobs, just like the majority of all Americans who use marijuana occasionally and responsibly. My name is Will, and I'm normal.
Going to take a moment now to go down to Louisiana and speak with Bill Rittenberg, who's joined us on the Stash a few months before. Bill's an attorney in New Orleans, Louisiana, dealing with criminal defense, and welcome back to the Stash.
It's a pleasure, Russ.
Well, we were looking through some of the newspaper editorials and articles as we do here at the Stash, and we caught this one from the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and talking about the futility of the drug war and arresting people for marijuana offenses. What's the situation down there in Louisiana? Are you guys seeing an upswing in marijuana arrests, or is this just more business as usual?
I think it's business as usual, but it's still a point well taken that the district attorney and the law enforcement establishment spends a whole lot of manpower and money and time arresting pot smokers and clogging the courts with their prosecutions that result in small fines and fines up to $500 and suspended sentences when they're not doing so good prosecuting rapists and murderers.
Yeah, are we seeing an increase in the crime rate in those more violent crimes in New Orleans and Louisiana in particular?
I don't know, and I'm always skeptical of the war on crime when we see these increases and decreases, but I will tell you this, that roughly half of all jury trials in Orleans Parish, that's the city of New Orleans, result in not guilty. So the district attorney is not doing a very good job on the murder and rape cases that the public is concerned about.
I see there. And the sentencing here, as we look in Louisiana, let's just kind of take a look at that. A first-time marijuana possession charge, that's just a misdemeanor, but after that, does that then get you some felony charges?
It can. It's the option of the district attorney. If the district attorney charges you with a second offense, the maximum penalty is 5 years. If they charge you with a third offense, it's 20 years. Although a lot of a lot of marijuana smokers who get busted a second time simply get busted as a misdemeanor, and same on a third time. Although there's an interesting historical reference that's, if you can go back till about 1970, the penalty back then for any amount of marijuana was a minimum mandatory sentence of 5 years that could not be suspended.
Oh, wow.
And they would catch people in the 1960s. It's interesting, in the 1960s when the laws were the harshest, more people were smoking marijuana for the first time, probably than any other time in history. And in Louisiana, police would pull people over, and if they could find like what they called gleanings, or just crumbs in their shirt pocket that had fallen out of a joint, that was enough to charge you and risk you facing 5 years in prison. And quite a few people went to jail for 5 years back then. Then they made the laws a little more lenient, and I'm not sure the number of marijuana smokers increased at all. So, the harsh penalties from almost 40 years ago didn't stop people from smoking marijuana.
I see. Now, are any district attorneys or anyone in Louisiana taking advantage of these second and third offense felonies, or do they tend to treat them lighter than that? Are they trying to keep people out of the system, or is it the opposite?
I think they use it in what they feel is the right way that you certainly would consider to be discriminatory. People that they consider bad actors, that they want to give a harsher punishment to, they'll charge with a second or third offense. If you come in and they think that your other job is a burglar, they don't have you for burglary, they might do that. But if you're simply just somebody that got caught the second or third time and there's no evidence that you're anything but a regular person aside from that, you're likely to be charged for the first time.
Okay.
Again and again.
Okay, so now the other thing that might be something to notice about this would be the disproportionate impact of arrests upon minority communities, African American communities in particular in New Orleans. Does that seem to follow the same ratios that we see around the rest of the country? Is it more or less profiling of minority perpetrators in this case?
I don't know the exact statistics, but I mean I think that there might be more of an economic argument there than a racial argument, and that people smoking joints out on the street or in their automobiles are more likely to get caught than smoking in their private homes. And so if you have people out on, but it certainly is true in New Orleans, as I believe it's true nationwide, that minorities get arrested way out of proportion to their numbers because marijuana smoking is not discriminatory between your complexion. People of all walks of life, color, and economic groups smoke marijuana at about the same percentages.
Sure. Now, with the article in the Times-Picayune made a point of saying, how much we're wasting in doing these prosecutions and these arrests for the low-level marijuana use. Is this a viewpoint that's radically different than the mainstream viewpoint in Louisiana? I mean, Times-Picayune is a pretty mainstream paper, I would imagine.
Yeah, again, I haven't seen any recent polls on the subject, but I'd actually come at it from kind of a more another point of view, which is for the individuals that are getting arrested, and it's worse in New Orleans than in a lot of the more rural parishes. If you get arrested for smoking a joint in your car, or having a joint in your possession, or for any other thing, if you get arrested in Orleans Parish, you can get bonded out theoretically very, very quickly. In other words, a judge may order your release at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yet the way the prison works, even though the judge ordered your release at 10 in the morning, they may not get around to releasing you until 2 or 3 a.m. The next morning. And so you get busted for a joint, and really you end up spending a whole day in jail, even though you may later be found not guilty. And that's a pretty harsh punishment for somebody just smoking a joint. They may not get sentenced to any time, but they spend a day in jail waiting to get out, even though they have their bond put up.
So it's kind of a underhanded way of law enforcement to create some sort of punishment without having to be on the books.
None of us, I don't know this for sure, but a lot of us criminal defense lawyers suspect that the reason is they get so much a day for keeping an inmate, and if they keep them past midnight, they get an extra $25 or whatever it is.
I see. Yeah, that's a little bit of a profit motivation then.
I think so. I mean, that's the only explanation that makes any sense to me.
Just yet another way that responsible adult marijuana smokers are hassled and harassed by our system.
Yeah, it's really silly, and I handle a lot of these cases being a lawyer in New Orleans, and it's frequently people come to New Orleans and they invited us to come to New Orleans for Mardi Gras to get crazy and have a wild time, and then they arrest us for doing what we thought they invited us to come here for.
Yeah, I guess taking off your shirt and drinking beer, that's okay, but smoking a joint, we can't have that.
Exactly.
Well, Bill Rittenberg's a criminal defense attorney in New Orleans, Louisiana, and a member of the NORML Legal Committee, and joins us by telephone from Louisiana. And thanks for calling us today.
Good talking with you, Russ.
Thank you for downloading the NORML Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. We are produced by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. Our executive producer is Alan St. Pierre. Our deputy director is Paul Armentano. Our webmaster is Brian Judy. And web production is provided by Red Aphid Interactive Media. As always, you can catch up on the latest information about marijuana at www.norml.org. And you can interact and download from our Audio Stash blog at stash.norml.org. For everyone here at NORML, I'm your host, Radical Russ Belville, hoping all your harvests are bountiful and your encounters with law enforcement are non-existent. We leave you today with another cannabis quote, some more reefer madness from 1938. This quote appeared in The Christian Century, which was a newspaper at the time. Quote,
"In some districts inhabited by Latin Americans, Filipinos, Spaniards, and Negroes, half the violent crimes are attributed to marijuana craze. Dr. Lee Rice of San Antonio reports that 80% of all murders committed by Mexicans are done while the killers are drugged on marijuana."
End quote. It sounds shocking when you hear these quotes, but this is exactly the kind of racism and fear-mongering that was used in the late 20s and early 30s to make hemp illegal. All the people knew what hemp was. They had to call it by the scary Mexican term marijuana in order to make it illegal. We're fighting to end this prohibition, and we can only do so by recognizing the lies of the past. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and join us tomorrow, Friday, for some more of your daily audio stash. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.